The blues. It's that soulful, foot-stomping, head-bobbing blend of toe-tapping rhythms and that characteristic guitar wail. It's the music that they call the blues. Yes, the blues. It is the music genre that has roots from the American Deep South, from African Americans who developed it during the last stretch of the 19th century. The genre evolved from African American work songs, combined with European American folk music influences. It usually contains shouts, work song lyrics, and even ballads, and has a very definitive call and response format. Now, let's take a look at some of the more defining musical characteristics of the blues. Call and response is a typical music motif, wherein two distinct phrases succeed each other, the first phrase being the call and the next being the response to the first phrase. It has roots in many African music cultures, where the call can be a chant and the response is the counter chant, the resolution of the phrase. The blues scale is a set of 6 notes that is usually used to accompany blues pieces. It is notable for having accidentals or blues notes, which are flattened or lowered pitch notes in between whole tones, especially the 4th note in the sequence. The 12-bar blues is a chord progression or a sequence of chords that accompanies the typical blues song. It usually has 3 measures of 4 bars, giving it a total of 12 bars. It follows variations of the 1-4-5 chord progression, which means the 1st, 4th, and 5th chords in a given musical key. Listen hard enough and you'll find that this is pretty much the basis for a majority of popular modern songs influenced by the blues. Anything from pop, rock, jazz, and even hip-hop and EDM. The shuffle or the swing is a type of approach to playing notes. Instead of playing notes equally in time, shuffling or swinging adds longer or shorter gaps in between them, giving them the characteristic bouncy finger snapping feel. The walking bass line is a type of bass accompaniment of syncopated notes, which are usually scale and chord runs that literally walk along with a piece of music. This gives the blues its characteristic groove. Of course, they wouldn't call it the blues for nothing. Traditional blues lyrical content heavily focuses on a repeated first line, which will be resolved at the end of the verse, as this fits nicely with a 12-bar progression. Let's end with a classic example. If your house catches fire and there ain't no water round, if your house catches fire and there ain't no water round, throw your rags out the window, let the doggone shack burn down. Snow. It's that white powdery ice that makes winter wonderlands possible. Today, let's talk about snow. But first, let's discuss what snow is. Snow is a form of precipitation or a product of condensation, just like rain. Both of these types of precipitation are simply water in its various states. While rain is liquid, snow is the solid crystalline form of water, or more commonly known as ice. These ice particles are really small and granular. This is the reason why snow has a white fluffy appearance and structure. Now that you know what snow is, let's talk about how snow forms. Just like rain and other precipitation, snow forms when the water vapor in the atmosphere condenses with the additional step of freezing, as the water turns into tiny ice crystals. This happens during wintertime, when certain parts of the Earth are colder than others, as these regions receive less sunlight due to the Earth's tilt and orbit. When this happens, the temperature in these regions drop to freezing temperatures, and thus, instead of condensed rain droplets, we get precipitation in the form of snow. Did you know that snow happens even before temperatures reach the freezing point of 0 degrees Celsius? That's right! Scientists have confirmed that snow starts to form when the temperature hits just below 2 degrees Celsius and continues to do so as the temperature drops to lower than 0 degrees. Snowflakes, or the small ice pattern of crystals that we can observe, are actually a collection of ice crystals that join together and form hexagonal patterns. Each snowflake has a unique shape, but they will always have 6 sides because of the way that they join together. There are actually 2 types of snow based on their size and appearance. Dry snow is the type of snow characterized by small flakes of snow that fall through dry, cool air. They are small and almost powdery and don't stick together as much. Dry snow is more ideal for snow sports, like skiing. On the other hand, there is wet snow. Wet snow is produced when the temperature is slightly warmer than 0 degrees, which makes snowflakes melt around the edges. Since these snowflakes are melted and wet, they tend to stick together and form bigger, heavier flakes that sort of have a slushy texture. This type of snow is ideal for making snowmen, snowballs, and similar things. While it may seem really fun to play with during winter, living in regions that experience snow poses some risks and challenges. One of the most obvious is the piling of snow. In extreme cases, entire roads and driveways can be completely covered with snow, making it difficult to travel in snowed-in areas. Snow also makes roads slippery for vehicles, so special tires are required for snow driving as well. Wax. You know them as substances used to make things shiny or maybe as components in items like candles. Well, there's actually more to wax than meets the eye. So for today, we'll be talking about wax. But first, let's find out what wax is. Waxes are actually a diverse type of organic compounds that are 1. Hydrophobic or water-repelling, and 2. Malleable solids at near ambient temperatures. Waxes typically melt above 40 degrees Celsius and when melted, turn into low viscosity liquids. Waxes come from a variety of naturally occurring and synthesized sources. Let's take a look. Plant wax. This type of wax comes from special secretions of certain plants. The plants use this wax on the surfaces of their cuticles, mostly as a way to control evaporation and hydration. The most commonly used plant wax is carnauba, which is used in confectionery and many types of polish. Animal wax. Animal wax comes from natural animal secretions. The most common type is of course the beeswax, which also has a myriad of uses dating back to ancient times. Petroleum wax. Waxes can also be derived from byproducts of processing petroleum. The most common is paraffin wax, which is used in candles, crayons, wax paper, and many more. Because of the properties of wax, they have a wide range of different applications. Waxes are used as paint or finishing additives because they repel water and provide a sheen to finishes. Other waxes that can be molded solid have been used as candles since ancient times. Waxes are also used as finishing agents and polishers, especially on porous materials like wood. But at the same time, you can also find specific types of wax for other surfaces, like metal and even concrete. In older times, before the invention of paper, wax tablets were used as writing surfaces. Special types of wax can also form outer coverings and are useful in food preservation and preparation. A good example of this is the wax covering used to pack cheese. Crayons themselves are made from colored wax. Wax can also be used as a medium for sculptures. Just look at the various wax museums featuring lifelike copies of famous stars. Wax can also be used to remove unwanted hairs in the body by applying it to hairy areas and then using a clean sheet to yank hairs and follicles in one motion. And that's just the tip of it. Indeed, there are countless uses for wax. Ice skating. It's one of the most popular winter pastimes that involves moving or gliding through ice. We're talking about, of course, the activity known as ice skating. Ice skating is the activity or action of moving through icy surfaces by the use of skates. skates are basically blades attached to footwear, used to travel through ice by cutting through its surface. Now we all know that ice is slippery, but why is it so? Well, according to science, a skate is able to move through ice because the molecules of ice near the surface do not properly bond with the mass of ice molecules at the bottom. Thus, the molecules on the surface are free to move, just like in a liquid state, despite being in a solid ice state. This semi-liquid state of the ice surface molecules provide lubrication and the friction that makes ice skating possible. Now, let's take a quick look at the history of ice skating. Studies suggest that the act of skating may have been invented more than 3,000 years ago in southern Finland. The first skates were made of sharpened animal bones, attached to boots, and were used to glide through icy surfaces like frozen lakes. A little ways forward to the 13th century, when the first real ice skates featuring steel blades were invented by the Dutch. Now, in the 17th century, skating was brought to England by King James II, who spent a brief time in the Netherlands after being exiled there. The British aristocracy embraced skating both as sport and pastime and contributed to its spread in popularity for people from all walks of life. During the 17th to 18th century, skating clubs began appearing where early forms of competitive figure skating and speed skating would be developed. Speed skating would see itself develop as a form of racing sports, where people raced each other along icy courses and obstacles. Figure skating, on the other hand, was the discipline associated with skating combined with music and choreographed moves and stunts, featuring influences from dance and ballet. British Lieutenant Robert Jones wrote the first book on the basics of figure skating in 1772. American Jackson Haynes is considered by many as the founder of this sport, as he was the first to incorporate dance and graceful moves to the sport. Then, in 1892, the International Skating Union was founded, serving as the international body responsible for governing speed and figure skating competitions. And that's how skating became a popular pastime and sport. Today, there are countless local and international sporting events that celebrate skating, and the reach of the sport has gone from temperate countries to other parts of the world as clay. It's that soft, moldable, and malleable solid that hardens into rock. You'd be surprised how useful this stuff is. Today, let's talk about clay. So, what is clay? Well, clay is a type of fine-grained rock or soil which contains one or more clay minerals, metal oxides, and some organic matter. Clay is considered plastic because of their water content, as well as its ability to become hard and brittle once they are dried, or in some instances fired up. Clay that is found in the earth contain a type of mineral called phyllosilicate. These minerals contain a variable amount of water trapped in its mineral structure. This is what gives clay its properties. Clays have many uses, and it has been one of those materials that have been in constant use since ancient times up to today. Let's take a look at how clay is typically processed. When clay is mixed with a certain proportion of water, it exhibits plasticity and is able to be molded or sculpted. The clay is usually hardened by baking in a kiln, where the extreme heat causes physical and chemical changes to occur as it hardens. Let's take a look at the varied uses for clay. One of the most common uses for clay is pottery and earthenware, like plant and flower pots, vases, cooking pots, and similar wares. Some of the earliest pottery found dates back to 14,000 BC. Clay was also used by our ancestors as the first known writing medium. Before, they used to scribble on wet clay tablets, and then made the writing permanent by firing up the tablet in a kiln just like baking. Clay was also used to make bricks, which laid the foundation for early construction and architecture. Notice how many structures from the turn of the century are made with bricks. Bridges, buildings, roads, churches, Chimneys, factories, and so much more have been built using bricks from clay. Speaking of construction and architecture, clay also served as a type of cement and binder material and sealant for structures. Having waterproof properties made it suitable for plugging dams, sealing cracks, and even making early sewage systems. Did you know that clay also has medicinal uses? In ancient times, a type of clay called Armenian bowl is used to soothe stomach upsets. Armenian bowl was also used as filler for teeth. Clays called kaolin and attapulgite, on the other hand, are used as anti-diarrhea medicines. Just imagine how all of these and many more are made all possible by something as reptiles. They are the scaly four-legged or no-legged vertebrate creatures that we share the land and the waters with. Today, let's talk about the group of animal species belonging to class Reptilia or the reptiles. Early reptiles or proto-reptiles first showed up around 312 million years ago, and evidence suggests that the first reptiles may have evolved from Reptiliomorpha, animal ancestors who were slowly showing increased adaptation to living on land. Most dinosaurs are known as the ancestors of today's reptiles. Today, reptiles comprise turtles, crocs, snakes, lizards, amphisbaenians, and tuatara. While some reptiles thrive both in land and water, reptiles are considered a different class from the other land and water living creatures called amphibians. Reptilia share common characteristics within their class. Let's take a look. The first and most common trait that is readily observed is that reptiles have scaly skin. This is what is known as a horny epidermis. When you look closely at scales, you'll notice how they have a pointy appearance. Scales allow reptiles to have a watertight skin and also allow them to both live in land and water. In fact, having scaly skins is one of the things that separate reptiles from amphibians. Reptiles are also cold-blooded or ectotherms, meaning that their body and blood temperature is not regulated by their own bodies, but rather a reptile's body adapts to the temperature of the area that they are in. So, to warm up, reptiles must go to a sunny and warm area, and to cool down, look for a shady, cool place. Reptiles are an egg-laying class of animals. Most reptiles lay their eggs on the ground and not in water, as opposed to amphibians. They have a behavior to look after their eggs, but once the baby reptiles are born, they are on their own to start their own lives independently. You'll also notice that reptiles do not have a larval stage, which means once they are born and hatched from their eggs, the reptile's appearance is the same with its adult counterpart, only smaller. There are in fact more than 6,500 species of reptiles. One of the biggest and heaviest is the saltwater crocodile, which can weigh up to 900 kilograms. On the other hand, the smallest known species is the dwarf gecko, measuring about 3/4 of an inch and weighs just below 2 grams. While the longest reptile is the reticulated python, which measures around 33 feet or 10.5 meters long on average. Architecture. Beautiful buildings, iconic structures, places that keep us safe from the sun, rain, and the other elements. Schools, offices, and our homes. All of these are products of the discipline called architecture. But what exactly is architecture? Well, architecture is the planning, designing, and constructing of buildings and physical structures. It is also the body of knowledge incorporating arts, physics, technology, and culture, which encompasses these physical structures. The word architecture comes from the Latin architectura, derived from the terms for chief and builder. It's not just about buildings and structures. Architecture requires careful planning and design that take into consideration such factors as function and use, socio-cultural considerations, the environment, and even the overall aesthetic. It also requires the creative use and manipulation of materials, building technologies, space, and flow of light and air. Not to mention the logistics and management factors involved when designing and building a structure. Really, architecture is a multidisciplinary field. Notice how different cultures throughout history have different aesthetics and designs when it comes to their architecture. Pyramids, columns, domes, cathedrals, temples, and many more. And while humans have been building structures since ancient times, one of the first considered written work on the subject comes from the 1st century AD, from De Architectura by the Roman architect Vitruvius. According to him, a good building should satisfy 3 key principles, namely firmness, commodity, and delight. Firmness or durability, meaning a building should stand up, hold its own, and remain in good condition. Commodity or utility, meaning that the structure should be used for the purpose that it was built for. And delight or beauty, meaning that the structure should also be aesthetically pleasing. In the 19th century, however, notable skyscraper architect Louis Sullivan promoted a new tenet in architectural design, which was form follows function. This means that even aesthetic considerations to a structure must be designed with function and utility in mind, and not as mere decorative elements of a structure. While in the earlier 20th century, a new guiding philosophy started to emerge, that of sustainability. This ethos promoted architectural design that is in harmony with the environment, not just with design, but with the materials used. The way it lessens pollution and integration of other environmentally sustainable practices like passive cooling and proper waste management.